ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Steve Gold.
I loved and admired my dad, but I wasn't much like him. Ray Gold, he built things and he fixed things and he took them apart and he put them back together again. Steve Gold, he read books, particularly about English and American literature. My dad was a self-taught engineer, and his plan and his cherished dream was that I would go off to college and study engineering, and after I graduated, come back to Chicago and go into business with him. That was a good plan. It was a fine dream. And the only thing wrong with it was that it was his dream, not mine. There were some cool things about being the son of an engineer. When I was still a teenager, I knew how to operate serious machinery, things like 10-ton hydraulic punch presses. And I used to enjoy going to work with my dad on Saturday mornings and running that equipment. The best thing about those Saturdays, though, to tell you the truth, was just hanging out with my dad. He wasn't only a good engineer, he was a very good man, always direct and honest and straightforward with everyone. But he never asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. It just hung in the air in my house that I was going to be an engineer. Nobody ever asked me that question, and I knew as a kid that I should not say anything about it. I shouldn't say, well, wait a minute, maybe I don't want to be an engineer, because nobody in my house wanted to hear that. So 18 years passed, and off I went to Ann Arbor to study engineering. Now, even in those days, my parents couldn't really afford the University of Michigan, but I had applied for and won a scholarship from a big engineering company. And as long as I stayed enrolled in engineering school, they would cover my tuition and my room and board for 4 years. My parents were proud of me for winning the scholarship, and they were relieved about the money. Well, by the end of my first term freshman year, though, I knew that whatever I was going to be in life, I was not going to be an engineer. I found all my courses to be tedious, my professors were boring, and I made no friends among my fellow engineering students. I did like everything else about being in college, though. I really liked being on my own for the first time in my life. I enjoyed the all-night bull sessions in my dorm room. I loved walking through the beautiful arboretum with my beautiful girlfriend, Linda. I was excited by the student power movement. I liked meeting new people, except for the engineers. And so at Christmas break, when I went home, I was able to talk enthusiastically about all of those things. And I steered the conversation away from my coursework. My dad probably wondered why that was, but he didn't ask and I didn't tell. When I got back on campus after that break, though, I began to think seriously about my dilemma. I wanted to stay in Ann Arbor, but I couldn't stand the thought of 3 more years of engineering courses. But if I dropped out of engineering school, I would lose my scholarship and I couldn't stay in Ann Arbor. What was I going to do? Well, I figured out a workaround for at least 1 year. No matter what you major in, you're always entitled to take some electives, courses that don't have to have anything to do with your major. So what I did sophomore year was I took all the electives I was entitled to for the next 3 years, and I crammed them all into those 2 terms, leaving no room for any engineering courses. I was still enrolled in engineering school. I was still technically just barely able to graduate with a degree in engineering after 3 years. But I wasn't being honest and direct and straightforward as my dad would have been. I was betraying the university by occupying a slot that should have gone to somebody who really wanted to be an engineer. I was betraying the company that gave me my scholarship by taking their money under false pretenses. Worst of all, I was betraying my dad's trust in me because I was afraid to tell him the truth about how I was feeling about being an engineer. So I lied through my teeth to my parents all that summer and through sophomore year, and I realized that things were going to have to change. We weren't getting along all that well anyway, because after a year or two in Ann Arbor, I was challenging my parents about everything. about their lifestyle, their beliefs, their religion, their politics, especially the war in Vietnam. And every time we tried to talk about anything, we would start fighting. The only good thing about all those fights was it made it real easy for me to continue to lie to them about my real intentions. I guess I hadn't burned quite all my bridges, though, because at the end of sophomore year, my dad drove up to Ann Arbor from Chicago to take me home. About the time we reached I-94, he said, so Steve, what courses are you going to be taking next term? By this time, I was 20 years old. I wasn't so afraid anymore. And I said, well, Dad, there's going to be some changes next year. Oh, what kind of changes? I'm not going to take any more engineering courses. I don't want to study engineering. Silence. Well, what do you want to study? English literature. I think I want to be a college English professor. Silence. What about your scholarship? Well, I'll have to give up the scholarship. I'll work a lot during the school year, and I'll get student loans for the rest. Steve, are you sure you don't want to be an engineer? Yes, Dad, I'm sure. It's just not for me. Well, my dad was a big man, but I could feel him deflate in the car seat next to me. I could feel his plan and his cherished dream that he'd had since before I was born pop like a soap bubble. It hadn't been my plan and it hadn't been my dream, but we both knew that I had betrayed his trust in me by lying to him about something so important. I didn't want to have his job, but I could have tried harder to have his values. I'd hurt him, I hurt him badly, and I regretted that for a long time. Back in Ann Arbor, though, things were pretty good. I was done with lying and with betrayals, and I felt I was finally on track to have the life I was meant to have. I even had a new father figure, or at least an older brother figure. This was Bob Cush, a young assistant professor in the English department. I had taken a course from Bob during my year of electives, and we really connected. Bob became my friend, and then he became my mentor. He was only about a dozen years older than I was, and he saw me as himself at a younger age. I saw him as the man who had exactly the job and exactly the life that I wanted to have. Bob's relationship to me was the relationship that I should have had with my dad, and I trusted that this time around, at least, it would work out. Bob and his attractive wife, Sandy, had met during graduate school at Northwestern. As soon as Bob got his PhD, he was recruited by Michigan to teach Victorian literature in the English department. Sandy left Northwestern without earning her degree, so when she got to Ann Arbor, the only job that she had was to be a faculty wife, something she turned out to be very good at. Like me, Bob had come to Michigan to do one thing and then had decided to do another. He had lost interest in Victorian literature and was really interested in modern poetry, both in teaching it and in writing it. He produced a steady stream of short, insightful poems that were published in magazines all over the country. I was proud of Bob, and I thought he was a great poet, but he confided in me that the English department was not happy with him for becoming better known for his poetry than for what they had hired him to do. I told him that that was not the important thing. The important thing was to go where his heart said he should go. That's what I had done, and it had worked out really well for me, or so I thought. During my junior year and on through my senior year, Bob tried to placate the English department by publishing on the Victorians, but they realized that what he was doing was just rehashing his doctoral thesis, and they told him to cut that out and do some real work. Bob wasn't able to game the system at Michigan any longer or more successfully than I was. Around this same time, a new professor arrived at the English department, John W. Aldrich, an internationally known literary scholar. Jack Aldrich was known for his brilliance, and he was also known for having nothing very good to say about anyone who was not John W. Aldrich. One of his colleagues once referred to him as a literary gangster. Jack had arrived in Michigan shortly after his third wife divorced him, and he was looking for new female companionship. Well, to my distress, Bob's star at Michigan began to fall even faster. The department told him that they were fed up with him, that he was never going to get tenure at Michigan, and he should begin looking for another job. As my mentor's professional career at Michigan came to an end, Sandy decided that she would make a change too. And so she left Bob and took up as Jack Aldrich's latest female companion. I watched my mentor and my friend's personal life and his professional life crumble into dust, and my idealized vision of the life of a university professor popped like a soap bubble. By the time I was ready to graduate, I knew that whatever I was going to be in life, I was not going to be a university professor of English. The ivory tower had betrayed me, or at least it had showed me its true colors, and I was done with it. Right after graduation, Linda and I got married. She had known me since high school and stuck by me through all the drama of my college years. And we put off starting our careers for a number of years while we did many things, from teaching at an HBCU in North Carolina to traveling to South Asia, across Afghanistan and India. On that journey, I began to wonder about populations and food supplies and why everybody in the world seemed to be either starving or obese. My long and successful career turned out to be not in engineering and not in English literature, but in public health. Linda and I have been married now for more than 50 years, and I trust that I am finally done with betrayals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve, for that story.